So we're here to talk about mindfulness for managing stress, managing change, and doing that in a healthy way. And we've all got stress going on. Right? Us humans have stress going on. Who would have guessed that? So how many folks have experience with mindfulness in some way, some form? Okay. So like through meditation, yoga, like mindfulness classes, MBSR, anything like that? Meditation.
Online.
Okay. Cool. Yoga.
Just reading mindfulness articles.
Reading about it, learning about it.
I've been reading about mindfulness. Am I hungry?
Yeah.
Asking that question.
Yeah, checking in with yourself. Okay, so we're going to talk more about checking in with ourselves. So that's awesome that you already have some background on that. So mindfulness, we'll just even start with like, what is mindfulness? Oh, and your little worksheets and handouts, that's just for like going along and writing things down as you go. I'm not going to like make you do anything. You're your own person. We're all adults here. You can do what you want to do. So mindfulness is being here now, present moment, right? So I'll just go over a few basics. Everyone has some experience with mindfulness, so I'm not going to bore you with it. But here now, present moment, and non-judgmentally, right? And that's kind of the key, is to like intentionally be in our moment with an observing mind, witnessing our thoughts, we're witnessing our emotions, we're witnessing our body sensations, whatever it is, in a non-judgmental way. And that's tough because our brain loves to put things in categories and, you know, what's better, what's worse, what's good, what's bad. We like to separate things out. Our brain judges things. And that got us through caveman days and then some. So that's great, but we're not cavemen anymore. So it's not as necessary, but our brain still does it. So mindfulness is also about a study of the mind. So that's another way to think about that, is mindfulness is about studying our mind. It's about having awareness of what's going on. So it's not to try to not be human. We're going to have judgmental thoughts. We're going to have stress reactions. It's going to happen. It's about noticing it and then handling it in a responsive way instead of reacting. Right? So mindfulness, observing, it's a practice, the study of the mind. And mindfulness requires that we get still. For those of us, like I was saying, like for me, that was super difficult when I wasn't practiced at it. Getting still was really, really uncomfortable because I had, you know, been doing my whole life on the go, doing anything to not be still. And I would just like take on obligations, even, you know, I wouldn't even think about it. I'd just be like, oh, that's a thing that's out there, so I should just, right? So instead of being thoughtful and patient with myself, it just go. So in that way, we're also kind of stuck in this hustle bustle life. You know, we live in a culture that encourages that too. It's like being productive and always busy and achieving and comparing and competing. And so we aren't encouraged to get still. So for a lot of us, it really does like take practice. And just like if you were to, you know, if you've never ran before and you're signing up for a marathon, you're not going to go run 26.2 miles today. You're going to probably start with a walk or a jog, you know, that's half a mile, a mile. And we do the same thing with mindfulness practices. If you aren't used to it, start small. Start with something that you're already doing. Okay, so that's a little piece of advice I'm going to throw out there. So if we aren't getting still and we're stuck in that hustle and bustle, then we don't have this power of choice that is so amazing. With awareness comes choice. And to have awareness still, we have to get still long enough to put some space between our thoughts and our emotions and our reactions. Right? And then we get this choice. We get choice, and it's amazing. Sometimes we don't even realize that we're not making choices until we get still and ask ourselves, what's going on with me? What do I need to do right now? What's the best wise decision right here? And we don't realize how often we're just like moving on, reaction, or just in autopilot mode, right? Man, I lived so many days and weeks and months and years in autopilot mode. I had no idea who I was even. And that can actually, I'll tell you that too, like if you haven't already started a mindfulness practice and you're starting to get still and go inward and be like, who is this person that's inside this body of mine? You might realize you don't know who you are. And then it might get scary because you don't know who that person is, and what if that person is like your worst fears, like not good enough, not lovable, like not enough, whatever that means. And so that can get really scary. And I say that just because that was my experience, right? And then I was like, oh, that's scary and painful. So I just went right back to being really busy and over functioning. And then it took several times me coming back to it over and over again to build up that tolerance that you need to get still. So when I say like get still, it sounds so easy, right? Just get still. But actually sometimes it gets because we resist it. We resist it. It becomes stressful and we resist it. Okay. One thing I want to say about brains, it's actually not one thing, it's several things. And I love brains. Brains are my favorite. So mindfulness, and this is great, like we were just talking before about like evidence-based, right? Like in academia, we need evidence-based whatever to like use it and have some clout about it. And so we've known mindfulness has been around for so many centuries. Philosophy, it's not tied to a religion. I'm sure you guys all know that by now. But it's not like religious. Like asking yourself to be aware of yourself isn't a religion, right? That's like a health practice. So we've known though that like when we practice mindfulness, actually practice it and involve it in our lives and bring it to our lives intentionally, we start feeling better, right? Like we are just happier people. But now evidence-based, we have all sorts of technology to like read brain waves and things like that. And so we know that over time when we practice mindfulness, it doesn't matter how you practice mindfulness, which is pretty cool too. But if you're practicing mindfulness, your brain will start to change. So the parts of our brain that manage emotion regulation, so calming down intense negative emotions, especially, our amygdala starts to chill out, which is the stress response part of our system, which right now is probably hyperactive because we're so, like I said, in that hustle lifestyle. So that starts to chill out. The part of our brain that's in charge of compassion for ourselves and others, that starts to get stronger. So it's nice because then we're not so mean to ourselves. And if we're in pain, we can care about that instead of, taking the edge off of it all of the time. And we have more neuroplasticity, which means that we can have an open mind. We can see things from different perspectives, that idea of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, things like that, right? So mindfulness, as we're about to talk about like managing stress and change, you'll hear like over the course of our workshop how those elements are coming in, right? So just kind of like tuck that into your mind. That these brain changes, practicing mindfulness so that we can have these brain changes helps with everything else that we're going to talk about today. Cool? Okay, so I'm going to have us do something. I have to pull my chimes out of my pineapple. I got this at one of those like craft fairs in the Midtown Global Market. Love it. Pineapple. So I use it to carry my chimes so I don't clink all over. So we're just going to do a little practice. Now that we know what mindfulness is, and then we'll get into talking more about stress and change and then what we actually do to help ourselves get through stress and change. So I'm going to have you just kind of sit in a chair while you're in a chair. Or you can do this standing too if you want to. So if it's like, if that feels good to you to kind of stand instead of sit right now, because we're going to be sitting together, that's totally fine. However you are, we just don't want body parts crossed, so arms to the side or just resting on your lap. And we want our feet just kind of on the floor, however feels comfortable to you. And trying to have a nice upright spine. So for me, when I'm in a chair, I think it's because I'm a short person, but I sit on the edge of my chair, and then it like really encourages my spine to be upright. And then I'm also more alert, right? If I'm leaning backwards, sometimes it's easy to kind of like, let yourself get tired. So nice, alert, upright spine. And if you can, close your eyes. And if that feels like uncomfortable to you, just kind of like look through the floor, maybe 3-5 feet in front of you, just kind of like gaze as if you're looking through the floor. So when we practice mindfulness, we're not changing anything. We're not trying to change anything. Mindfulness is observing what is right now without judgment. So we're going to practice that by just noticing right now any body sensations that you have. So you might kind of do a scan, just kind of quickly from head to toe, and just noticing what parts of your body are having sensations right now. Any tension, maybe it feels open, maybe there's comfort or discomfort, and we just label that without trying to change it and continue your focus down your body. After you've gotten to your toes, bring your attention more inside your body to your emotions. Our emotions live in our body sensations. So maybe just noticing any dominant emotions going on, or even more subtle emotions that are swimming around in there. And we just label them, without judging them as right, wrong, good, or bad. But you can label them with a word: anxious, tired, whatever. And just noticing that they're there. That's all we're doing. And then bringing our awareness to our human brain, squishy thing in our skull that spits out patterns for us. Maybe just noticing any general mindsets that you have right now, or any thoughts that are really kind of preoccupying at the moment. With them, or just labeling that they're there. And now, just as you are, notice how your breath is. Whatever breath that you brought with you this morning, just noticing that. Are you breathing into your rib, belly? Does it seem easy? Does it seem stressed or tense? Shallow? Deep? Just noticing it as it is. It's exactly as it should be. And now we are going to try to change your breath. Just invite you to slow your breath down just a little bit more. However it is right now, and maybe you noticed as you brought attention to it, it started to shift on its own. That happens. We don't want to stop that from happening, but we also aren't striving for it to be something different. But now, doing your best to just gently invite your breath to slow down. And if it's possible, breathing more into your belly. So as you breathe in, your lungs push down. You feel your belly button come out. And then as you exhale, you can feel your belly button come back in towards your spine. And just being with each inhale and each exhale. Practicing keeping your awareness on your breath. Noticing the sensations as air comes in and as air comes out. I'm going to ring my chime. And then in a minute or two, I'm going to ring the chime again, and that will be your invitation to bring your awareness back to the room on your own gentle time. Come back to the room. Any thoughts? Any comments? How it was for you? Anything you were surprised by or not surprised by? Anything that you found challenging or confusing? Anything that felt good, felt bad?
Challenging to meditate.
It's challenging to meditate.
I know that it does help me feel more aware of how my body feels. I could feel all the tension and heaviness on my shoulders like they were bricks. And trying to release that was probably the other challenge.
So what was it like to just be with it and not try to release it?
It was like holding bricks on my shoulders and not being able to pick them up. Right. So mindfulness, right? Mindfulness encourages us to be with it without trying to change it. Sometimes mindfulness brings our attention to things that we do want different and better, or to feel better, I should say. But when we're practicing mindfulness, we really just want to bring our attention to what is. And we might even notice that, like, wow, my urge, my desire is to make this different or to try to release this, And so sometimes we start being aware of the thoughts we have about our sensations too, right? And it's difficult to just like be with what's uncomfortable. And maybe that's the take-home message, right? Is that it is difficult and challenging to just be with things that are uncomfortable, distressing, right? And how normal it is for us humans to avoid that, like avoid being in discomfort and to take the edge off in some way or to make it better in some way. Sometimes we do that in healthy ways and sometimes we do that in unhealthy ways, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Thanks for sharing that. That was really helpful. Any other reactions or thoughts? I think for me, I have body pain constantly, and my whole entire right side is hurting really bad. So once I closed my eyes and started focusing on that, it seemed to intensify.
Yeah.
And there's a breathing, I brought it down a bit, but it's hard to not focus. I want to learn how to not be focused on my pain all the time.
Sure.
It was kind of a hard thing to do. Because I'm so stuck. I feel stuck in the pain all the time.
Yeah. Interesting. I might come back to that later. It's bringing up some things that I want to talk about later, but I don't want to jump ahead. But I'm hoping I remember to use that as an example. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Sorry, I looked at you like, I don't know why. But like,
No.
You're next. Just kidding. Nobody has to share anything. It's just like, we can if we want to.
I was getting a lot of images.
Yeah?
And I just, like, I don't know why, colors, and what I read about that is that just don't pay attention to it and let it go through. But I don't know why I'm very visual.
Do we have to know why?
No.
Cool. Our human brain, like it wants to like know answers, even when knowing the answer doesn't change it, right? But you're just wired that way is probably how it goes, right? Like some people just are more visual. Like I know if I'm trying to organize something, I first have to have it out on paper. Like I don't have to, but I really like to. Like I like seeing it first before I move forward with it. And so, yeah, the colors come up and you might just notice like, oh, that's pleasant or that's unpleasant, or yeah, just being able to observe it without attaching to it. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments? You don't have to go just once if you don't want to either. I will let you speak twice. Okay. All right. Well, if somebody comes up later, feel free to share. Feel free to share. Oh, did we talk about all this? I did. Yes. I love that. Okay, so we're going to talk about stress. Like, what is stress? So, stress, we're going to talk about in a couple ways. But we'll first start talking about stress as like a physiological thing that happens for humans. Okay, so we are wired to have stress responses or reactions. I like to use the word reaction because it's something that it's a chain reaction, right? Instead of a chosen response. So we're wired that way. So if we feel like we're not safe or we need to protect ourselves in some way, something is in danger. It could be emotional danger, it could be physical danger, whatever it is. But our stress reaction is there. It's wired in us to keep us safe. Got us through all those caveman days, right? It was way better to have a stress reaction when there was a tiger in the bushes than not, right? Because what happens is that reaction, that physiological reaction, gets us amped up, right? So fight, flight, freeze. You guys have heard of this? Yes, fight, flight, freeze. So that's what happens in our system. And some of us tend to go one way or another, and sometimes it's situational. Like I know that there's some situations where it's stressful and I freeze. So like conflict is hard for me because I grew up in the Midwest and with this family that's very conflict avoidant, right? So for me, when there's conflict or people are getting mad at each other, I'm like, oh, like I freeze, right? It's stressful for my system. I feel emotionally in danger, you know, and I'm using that word loosely. But so I freeze up, right? So, but there are other situations where my reaction is actually to flight, to like, I don't want to be here, right? That I avoid. So I just find a way to not be there. There are a few situations where I find myself getting to the fight, where I'm like, oh, you know, arguing or aggressive or whatever. But that is a normal thing, right? Like, so fight, flight, freeze happens. It's part of our reaction. It's part of our physiological reaction. So when that happens, when we're like, oh, I'm in danger in some way, some form, cortisol gets going, the adrenaline gets going, our neurochemicals change, our physiology, like it changes, right? And then our nervous system gets going, so we're breathing faster and our heart rate is going faster and our muscles are getting ready for whatever it is we need to do. So this is what happens in the body. We are wired that way. We can't help that we are human, right? But like I was saying before, mindfulness helps us bring that down so we're not so hypersensitive to the reaction and we're not so hypersensitive to stress, right? That starts bringing it down. But this is a thing that happens. Nothing is wrong, bad, or broken in you if you feel stressed out sometimes. You're actually human. Right? But it doesn't feel good, right? Like in the long run, it doesn't feel good. And we aren't wired as humans to be in that stress response ongoing. We are wired like our monkey friends to hang out in the trees most of the time with our friends, picking bugs off of each other, eating bananas. And then if something happens, we have that stress response, we take care of it, and then we come back to our relaxed baseline quickly. We are more wired to be in that kind of a lifestyle, right? But most of us aren't hanging out in trees with our friends. We have full-time jobs, sometimes we also have part-time jobs, we have families, we have houses or apartments or whatever that we need to take care of, our car breaks down, blah, 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 right? Like we are on the go all the time. We aren't built for that. We aren't built for that. And like I was saying before, I'm aware that we live in a culture that really emphasizes and puts a lot of value on being productive and always being busy and achieving, and we kind of even like glorify stress. Has anybody ever been in like a one-up conversation of like, I'm so tired because all these things, or I'm just so stressed because all these things, and then, oh, well, let me tell you about how much stress I've got going on. It's more than you, you know, like we even like, right? You're nodding, you're like, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've been guilty of that too, totally. And I still sometimes will like catch myself on it. I'm like, why am I even talking about this? Why am I even talking about like how stressed out I am? And why am I so stressed out? Shouldn't I be working on that, right? So anyway, so we all do it. Even those of us who are like, maybe could stand to not do that so much. But that's just as a sign of like the culture that we live in, right? And how we're a part of that. We've like normalized it. We're desensitized to how stressed out we are. It's our norm, right? Like I remember actually both, when I finished college and when I finished graduate school, both times, like when it was all done, I didn't know what to do with myself. And then both times, without even trying, I lost weight, my immune system improved, whatever, right? And because I wasn't so stressed out, and I didn't realize how stressed out I was, or that I was even so unhealthy, because it just became the norm. It was the norm. And I was desensitized to it, right? So we live in this culture, can't help that. But we do get choice, right? With awareness comes choice. So anyway, this is why I have to have notes, so I stay on task, because I will go on tangents in my soapboxes that I really like. So we're not built for this ongoing, right? So I am going to share about telomeres. Do you guys know about telomeres? I just like to talk about this because I'm a nerd, I think, but we all get the point. But so telomeres are, it's like this protective coating that's at the end of our DNA strands, kind of like the end of shoelaces. So it's at the end of our DNA strands, and it protects our DNA so that when it copies, from our cells, replicate, that's there so that it stays protected and it doesn't get damaged. Because when our DNA strands get damaged, that's when things happen like illnesses. We think that cancer, like that's part of cancer, and like the mutations, like we're just more likely to have mutations happen, and that's where cancer comes from. And so we age faster, right? Like that's a reason why we see a president go into office and then 4 years later they look like 20 years older than they did 4 years ago, because stress, right? And the telomeres are wearing down. So just so we can be positive and hopeful about this, the recent studies and research and literature is saying that this can actually start to be reversed, right? So it's not like, oh, once those telomeres are damaged, you're donezo. The more that we can bring calm into our lives, and maybe using mindfulness as a strategy, perhaps, and relaxation and things like that, the more that we can take care of ourselves, that can get reversed. But this is real, you guys. It's real. Stress, and what damages the telomeres, I didn't say this, is the cocktail of stress that's in our body. Like that's what wears it down, or wears them down, right? So this is real. It's like a thing that's happening inside of us. And so in this place of that stress reaction, whether it's like kind of ongoing stress, right? And so we're just kind of like always on this like on the edge kind of place, and maybe we don't even realize that we're there because we're so desensitized to it, it's our norm. Or we have like that stress response that's situational. We know that we're in that like fight, flight, freeze, but we tend to react in ways that aren't in line with our values, right? And that's tough, because then we get through the situation and there's a part of us that's like, oh, now I feel crappy about that, and that's stressful. We stressed out. We get stressed out about how we reacted when we were stressed out, right? Not so helpful. Like this cycle is not so kind on us. So we don't act in line with our values, or we do things to take the edge off that we later are like, oh, negative consequences now, right? Like, oh, like some of us use food, Netflix, or drugs, or alcohol, or being too busy, like taking on too many activities, or leadership positions, or whatever. Like some of it might look like we got it together, and that's what can be interesting. Is some of the ways we take the edge off, it's masked as having it together, but it's not. It's reactionary, right? So anyway, we all have ways of taking the edge off, but a lot of times it's maladaptive, or just not in line with our values. And then we live a life even more stressed out instead of feeling peace and calm and happy, and like we're doing life the way that we want to do it, right? So it just adds on to it. So I also want to talk about mindset here, about stress. Has anybody heard the kind of example of like first arrow, second arrow? Okay, so this is from like Buddhist teachings, and so the story goes that the Buddha is talking to one of his students or followers, and says, in like, well, when an arrow comes in, it hurts, right? Yeah, it hurts. So say, okay, well, if a second arrow comes in, does it hurt more? Yeah, it does hurt more. And so he goes on to explain that usually that first arrow is something that we don't have a choice about, right? It's something that just, it happens. Car broke down. Moving day happens to be the snowiest day of the year, whatever it is, right? Like whatever the stressful thing is, like it's not our choice. Or change happens that wasn't our choice. Change is stressful. I forgot to mention this. change is inherently stressful because change means that our brain has to adapt to something different, and that is stress. Like that's stress, right? So even if we're changing and we're like, I want this change, right? Or like, I'm working on something that's better for me. Our brain is having to adapt, and that is hard on our system. So it's just something to keep in mind. That even when we're wanting that change, it's stressful. So anyway, stress comes in our life, and when it's something that's situational, or it's just like we didn't want it, somebody passes away, whatever, right? Like that wasn't our choice. It hurts. It's painful. So the second arrow is our mindset about that first arrow. And the thing about the second arrow is that it's our choice. So our reaction to the first arrow is our choice. Right? So in some ways, when we're talking about like managing change, what we're talking about is the second arrow. Because stress is going to happen in life. We are in this human life where things are changing all the time. Nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary. Our emotions are temporary. Our thoughts are temporary. The weather is temporary. If you live in Minnesota, it is super temporary, right? Like, so everything is changing all the time. And then we have things come into our life that aren't ideal, or we don't like, we don't want. It's going to happen. Stress is going to happen. So when we're talking about managing stress and change, a lot of it is talking about the second arrow, our reaction, the stress that wasn't our choice. Does that make sense? Does anybody have an example of like when they had a first arrow and they know what their second arrow was? I can share one just to kind of like get, I have tons of examples because it's something that happens all day, every day, right? Because our human brains want to judge things and be mean. So anyway, so I was, when was this? I don't know, not all that long ago. But I was rushing around and I was trying to get out the door, and then I like was clumsy and I knocked something over, right? And then it ended that, like what I knocked over ended up like spilling something else, right? It was just like, no, because like you're just trying to get out the door, right? So that's stressful, right? Like now I have to clean something up when I'm already 5 minutes behind what I wanted to do. And so first arrow was knocking something over and having to clean it up, right? So I couldn't just be like, oh, clean that up when I get home. Like I couldn't do that this time. So second arrow was I started like telling myself, gosh, I'm so clumsy. What is wrong with me? This sucks. Like now I'm going to be extra late, like whatever, right? So those were the second arrows and many second arrows, right? The reaction to the thing that wasn't my choice. Has anybody had their car break down? Have to like pay for repairs that you weren't planning on? Yeah. So that's first arrow. So second arrow, what are some examples of second arrows in that situation? Car broke down. Then what do you tell yourself? Get upset. What do you tell yourself about that?
Oh, great, one more thing to deal with.
Why me? One more thing to deal with. I don't have time for this. Like, right? We're cussing probably. I know I do. Did that happen to you? Oh no. So you're like, I made this appointment of like almost a month ago and now I'm not gonna make it. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So those are examples, right? And this happens like all the time. Something stressful happens, wasn't our choice, and then our reaction to it is what makes the stress more stressful. What was that? Oh, yeah. So maybe what's painful, and that's interesting too, because like, what's painful about that? What's painful in that situation? Not being right, or somebody not believing you. Sorry.
Yeah. So like, someone said there's I don't remember telling you that. Like I just told you a few hours ago. And they sat there and argued with me about what I said, and it just got to the point where I noticed I was reacting. I was choosing to react to answering everything because you'd be like, well, this. And, like, please stop messaging me. Like, well, this. And I finally just realized what I was doing, became aware of like me feeding into this.
Sure.
And so I
Yeah.
literally put ignore messages so I couldn't get any more messages.
There you go. Good job. Nice work. Yeah, so I could see a lot of different ways that like the first arrow could be like somebody being relentless about it, and you're like, especially if we're in a situation where we feel like we can't get out of it, right? Like I went through a 6-year relationship like that where I was being verbally attacked, and I was in situations where like, I can't get out of this situation, and so then the second arrows that come with that, right, of like being mad at the other person or going into like our shame stories about ourselves, like whatever it is, the second arrow is about how somebody is reacting and we don't like it, how somebody is behaving and we don't like it, right? That can be the first arrow. Okay, good example. Thanks for sharing that. Because I'm saying, sorry, it's people. Because people aren't things. I mean, kind of, but we don't learn to. They're subjects, not objects, right? What was that?
People create things.
This is true. This is true. Exactly. Okay, so on your worksheets, I do have a little section on the first page to just kind of be thinking about, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but to be thinking about the different kinds of stressors that we have in our life, because some of them are like ongoing things, like house maintenance, dealing with traffic every day, chronic pain, things like that. Like, so some of these stressors that we have are like kind of ongoing things. Some stressors that we, what? You tell me. Okay. And then sometimes we have stressful things in our life that are more like situational, like somebody passed away. Moving day is the snowiest day of the year, things like that are like right here, right now. I got the flu, but they're not like an everyday thing. And then we have stressors. I'm going to talk more about this a little bit because we're here mostly to talk about managing second arrows, but mindsets that are stressful. And that's ours to own, right? Is the mindsets that are stressful, because when it comes down to it, what do we have control over? Ourselves, right? I don't have control over you. You don't have control over me, even if I want to. Like sometimes I try to do things because, like, of course I want you guys to like me and, have a good time here. And, but when it comes down to it, like you're here with your own experiences. Something could have happened this morning that's totally preoccupying you, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to not be in a good spot, right? Or maybe you have preconceived notions about people with red hair, and you're up here judging me, thinking that I'm like a witch and should be burned at the stake. I don't know, but like that's not mine, right? So even in those situations, when we are trying to like influence other people, when it comes down to it, we don't have control of other people. What they do, what they think, what they feel, and you guys, I spent, and I still do this, I catch myself on it almost every day still. I have done a lot of trying to manage other people's emotions, right? Taking it on as my responsibility, that everyone is calm and happy and feeling good. And if there was conflict, that we distract from that and get back to feeling happy again, right? Like, so a lot of managing emotions. But I can't do that. And nobody can. Nobody can manage anybody else's emotions. We have a hard enough time managing our own. Right, and actually, like when we're trying to manage other people's emotions, that's a way that we're managing our emotions. Because if we're like, I feel anxious when there's conflict, or when somebody's not happy, or when they're mad or sad, me trying to make people feel better is actually like, okay, now I can feel at ease again, right? So it's like actually the opposite. Anyway, so we have no control over other people. We also have no control over like things outside of us, our external world. So when we try to change things that aren't in our control, it's going to be stressful. And that comes to the next point about how when we argue with reality, we're going to be stressed, right? Like it's just guaranteed. Whenever we're fighting with reality, we're saying it should be different than it is right now, we're going to suffer. We're going to have stress. And that's one of those mindsets that I was talking about. Or part of the mindset, right? And we do this a lot, like, oh, I shouldn't be in pain. whether it's emotional pain or physical pain, or I shouldn't have gotten fired from my job, whatever it is, right? When we're fighting with reality, it's going to add stress, second arrows, lots of second arrows when we're fighting with reality. Does anybody else in here fight with reality sometimes? Yeah, we all do. Because we don't like everything, right? We want things to be pleasant all the time, which is understandable. Okay. Oh man, I'm so beyond what this is already. Mm-hmm. Yes, you guys, I'm staying on topic. Great. Yes. Okay. So this is the mindset check, right, that we want to be doing, because when we are stressed out, and the more we do that checking in with ourselves and can do that regularly, that we kind of practice at the beginning of our workshop today, even if it's just checking in with your breath, you don't have to do the whole thing, or like checking in with your body, checking in with your thoughts, just choosing one of those to check in with will give you a lot of information about how you're doing. But most of us are so used to just like being on that autopilot and go, 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 right, that we aren't even aware that we're stressed out. So the more we can check in with ourselves and do so intentionally and in a kind way towards ourselves, how are you doing right now? We can check it before we wreck it. Right, which is super helpful to be able to check it before we wreck it. Sometimes we wreck it and we're like, where did that even come from? I didn't even know I was stressed out, right? I didn't even know I was angry, because we're not paying attention to how we're doing. We're totally disconnected from ourselves. So getting to know your cues, whether it's physical stuff or things that you think, or body sensations, or how you breathe, getting to know like your signs of I have stress going on. And stress can be like that physiological response, right? So it's real, it's not made up. We have stress going on, but get used to your cues so that you can notice that. And then something that we can start doing from there is checking in with our mindsets. Right? Checking in with our mindset. Are we arguing with something in reality? Are we saying to ourselves it shouldn't be this way? Like shoulding on things, it's pretty gross, you guys, but we do it a lot. We should on things all the time. We should on ourselves, we should on others, we should on situations, right? We should in traffic. Do you guys should in traffic? I should in traffic. They're like, gosh, everybody should be going faster. It's like, no, they shouldn't. It's 5 o'clock on a Thursday. How could we possibly be going faster when everyone's on the highway, right? Like, so we do a lot of arguing with reality, and one of our signs that we're arguing is that we're having shoulds. Right? That we're having shoulds. Okay, expectations. And so I'm not saying that we shouldn't have standards of how people treat us, be treated, and things like that. So it's not anything around that. You absolutely should want respect and set boundaries and limits that are good for you. But when I'm talking about expectations, it kind of goes along with that, the should, right? So if we're feeling angry or stressed, sometimes there's an expectation in there that didn't get met. Right? Like my friend should always be on time, right? So if my friend isn't on time, I expect her to be on time, and then she's late and I'm angry, right? Was that expectation helpful? Did it change anything by being angry or being stressed? Right? It doesn't change anything. It just makes me feel more miserable, right? Or if I pick up my phone and it's dead and I get angry, well, I probably expected that when I picked up my phone to call somebody, that I could call somebody. Right? But my expectation wasn't met. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's a mindset to check in with too. Whenever we're competing and comparing, this is one that I could go a lot into. And in some of my workshops and seminars and some of the online courses that I do dive into this pretty deep. But for the sake of right here, right now, in the few minutes that we still have together, I will just say that we compete and we compare, and it's not in line with reality, in that we are telling ourselves a story that I need to be better than, or I am better than, or I am less than, right? And the reality is that is not true. Like, we all have inherent worth and value, and nobody has more than anybody else. So when we're competing and comparing, we're telling ourselves a story about why we think somebody has more value than us. or why we think we have more value than somebody else. Either way, it's arguing with reality. And a lot of times, like I was saying before, everything is temporary, everything changes, right? So just because we made an achievement, well, we live in that like, yay, for a little while, but it fades. And then we have to go to the next thing to feel okay again, and the next thing to feel okay again, right? And so and achieving and that external, like having people approve of me so I can feel good about myself, that is stressful. It's stressful because it argues with the reality that you are already inherently worthy and valuable. Okay, so like I said, I go into that a lot in some of my other stuffs. So if that's interesting to you, we can talk more about that. But I'm just putting that out there because most of us can relate to that, right? Most of us can relate to that. Okay. I think I'm going to leave it at that for those pieces. So let's workshop a little bit, because one way that we can start helping ourselves out to have less of that stress with those mindsets is reframing, right? So a couple different ways that we can do this. I just want to make sure that I said it right. Yeah, okay. So one thing that we can do is think about how whatever this stressful thing is in my life that's going on, or an expectation I had that didn't get met, or I'm shooting on something, or I find myself feeling not as good as somebody else because I'm putting them on a pedestal, or what I'm comparing in some way, asking ourselves, how can this be an opportunity to work on my practice, whatever your mindful practice is about right now, right? Because it shifts. Like I kind of change my focus every month or so. Right? Like, so sometimes my focus is on patience, or sometimes my focus is on self-compassion, or non-judging. Like, so my mindful practice changes. But these opportunities, and that's how we see, like, these are opportunities to practice mindfulness. Okay. So who has something that's stressful in their life that they feel willing to share, even if it's in a generic way? Yeah. Okay. So you're not making enough money and it's stressful. Okay, so finances, like that's a topic, right? Finances. And let me reframe real fast, because the finances aren't stressful. It's our thoughts about it that are stressful. Everything is neutral. There isn't anything that isn't neutral. It's our thoughts that we have about whatever that neutral thing is that makes us live in this story that things are right, wrong, good, or bad, and they're stressful or not. Okay, so everything's neutral. Okay, so finances, stress. So the thought is that I don't have enough money. I'm not able to live the life that I want to live based on this income or whatever. Or maybe I have bills that I don't want because I had a hospital stay last year and I'm still paying for it or whatever. Right? Okay, so how can we use that as an opportunity to practice mindfulness? Right, so mindfulness, the attitudes of mindfulness, non-judgment, right? I might start there.
When you pay a bill, say, I'm so glad I was able to pay that bill. I feel good about paying that bill.
Okay.
I had enough money to pay that bill. Feels good.
Okay, so focusing on facts.
Yeah.
I had enough money to pay that bill. Focusing on the facts. Yeah, facts are not like non-judgmental, right? Facts are facts. I had a bill, I paid the bill. Facts. I might have thoughts about how I had that bill, or thoughts about how I paid the bill or whatever, but like focusing on the facts, non-judgment. Awesome. Let me read something else too, guys. I just need like a poster of this, by the way. I think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna make a poster. So John Kabat-Zinn, you guys heard John Kabat-Zinn? What's his last name? Kabat-Zinn, 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 John. So he's kind of like one of the main mindfulness dudes out there right now. And he wrote Full Catastrophe Living, which is like this giant book, but he also created MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, which is like a thing now. It's like all over the place. So,
again, I'm sorry.
What do you want me to say?
We had the, oh, that's it.
I do say a lot of words really fast, right? Okay, so John Kabat-Zinn,
Yeah.
so he wrote Full Catastrophe Living. That's well, one of the things, but that's kind of like, it's just like thick, but it's awesome though. Like if you can take it piece by piece, it's awesome. So he created MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction. Yeah. And if you want to know more about that, we can talk about it later. I am not a facilitator of that, but there are many places around the cities where you can take an MBSR course. Anyway, so he, in that book, Full Catastrophe Living, he needs that go along with a mindfulness practice. So non-judging, patience, meaning letting things run their course instead of trying to like push it to be something different. Beginner's mind, which is this idea that we come to something as if we've never been in this situation before. I've never seen this flower before. I've never been in this argument before, right? Like whatever it is, we come to a situation as if for the first time. Trust, meaning we're trusting our internal experience, and kind of that helps us reduce our reliance or dependence on external like validation and approval and things like that. So non-striving, which means that we're not trying to, if we're here now in the present moment, in this moment, we're not striving for something to be different, which is why when we practice that check-in, and it's like we're not going to try to change anything, we're just noticing. If you notice something uncomfortable, just notice it. We don't need to change it. We don't need to like work for it to be better. Right? Just be with it as it is right now, because all we can do is be with it as it is right now anyway. Acceptance, so radical acceptance is that idea of like, this is how it is, it couldn't be any other way. Given all these tiny circumstances that led up to this point, how could it be any different? So when I'm in traffic, like I think I gave this example a little bit ago, right? I'm in traffic and I'm shooting on traffic. Everyone should be going faster. I need to get home faster. For no reason, by the way. There's nothing at home that I need to get home for faster. But you know, I'm like in traffic and everyone should be going faster. And the acceptance is, how could this be anything other than what it is? It is 5 o'clock on a Thursday. Everyone's on the road. How could it be anything different than this, right? Like this is exactly as it should be, given that most people get off work between 4:30 and 5:30, and they need to get home, and most people drive. How could it be any other thing? Of course, that's acceptance, radical acceptance. And then letting go. So letting go, how do I describe this one? Because I found it to be actually a little tricky. Letting go is kind of this ability that we're not like grasping. So if we like how something is, we're not like clinging to it. It's kind of like that idea of like, we let things flow. Things are going to change, and we have to have radical acceptance about that, and that's how it helps us let go. Grief and loss might be one where we practice letting go. Right? Okay. So I know that was a lot of information really fast. I should get a poster. I need to get a poster.
You'll get a poster.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you have confidence in me. I'm going to get a poster. I'm going to make a poster. Okay, so something stressful goes on, and that is our opportunity to practice mindfulness or practice an attitude or a mindset that brings us back to peace, right? So finances. So you were, and then you were saying practice non-judging by looking at the facts. Okay. Anything else? Any other like mindsets or attitudes that we could use in that moment? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's okay. But you know, it is what it is. So I'm just gonna accept.
The therapists I've had in the past have mentioned to me about creating boundaries with my family, particularly my mom, for reasons I don't need to share. But so we had just come off of a lot of family time with the vacation and them helping me move into a new place. I needed some space away from them. Mom had called asking me about dinner. I said, no thanks, I'm really tired. She wasn't really taking that as an answer. I had mentioned, we spent a lot of time together. I just need some me time. And she got angry and hung up on me. And so I had to remind myself multiple times within the next, couple hours on and off, her emotions and Dad's emotions are not my responsibility. I cannot control how they feel. I can only control what I say and what I do. I can't control anything with them.
Absolutely. Totally. So opportunity to practice, right? So somebody, I'm trying to set a boundary with somebody and I can tell because we're perceptive, like I can tell that they don't like it. It's making them angry, making them sad, maybe they feel hurt, who knows, like it could be anything, right? But we're setting a boundary, they don't like it. We know they don't like it. And that's uncomfortable for us, right? So what did you practice, do you think?
Out of what you listed?
Anything. But sure, that's a good place to start.
Just, I guess, most of them I would say,
Nice work.
I'm
But yeah.
trying to not judge myself for being quote unquote selfish.
Yeah.
And, I was trying to trust the situation would work out eventually.
It sounds like, I'm just gonna pause real fast, it sounds like you're even trusting yourself. If I can trust that I am doing what is best for me.
Yes.
And like trusting that. Yeah, cool. Sorry, I totally interrupted.
No, that's okay. Yeah, and just accepting goes into trusting, and then letting go, just letting go of the fact that this is out of my hands. I did what I could. The rest of it is not up to me.
Yeah.
Letting that go.
Yeah. And it sounds like you were making some efforts to not argue with reality. Right? That like, this is how it is. They are angry, they are upset, they do not like this boundary. That isn't mine. Oh, yeah. You guys, wedding planning is like a great opportunity to practice all that. I can relate. Yeah. Nice work. Thanks for sharing that, by the way, too. Does anybody else have folks in their life that don't like it when they set boundaries? Or when you set one? Yeah. Yeah, right. It's hard. It is hard. It is totally hard. Yeah. So the opportunities, you guys. Opportunities. So that's one. Yeah. I was wondering, yeah, from what you've shared.
I think sometimes for me is so I not appreciate all you've done as a parent. Sometimes thinking, they haven't had the benefit of therapy. They're really trying to do the best they can with what tools they have. Maybe their parents work the best, and they're not trying to hurt me. And for me, trying to pivot that thought, just to try to get that emotion, which is not easy, right? It takes a lot of practice to do that. Decided she's trying to do the best she can with what tools she has.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to, and sometimes like shrinking that person down a little child, which is sometimes how they're acting. Like if this child was throwing a tantrum like this, what would I do? Would I say, stop it, you dummy? Or would I say, you just don't know. You just don't know. And instead of selfish, saying self-care is also, like I'm taking care of myself. And she doesn't always know what's best for me because she's not in my body, she's not in my situation.
Nice.
So some of those pivot thoughts
totally
are helpful for me.
Yep, so reframing that, absolutely. And so I'm just gonna name a couple themes that came out of that, at least from what I was hearing. So that neuroplasticity, right? Mindfulness, practicing mindfulness regularly helps us put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, right? We think about things in a more open way instead of getting rigid. So I heard that in what you were saying. Compassion, the part of our brain that's in charge of compassion gets stronger when we're practicing mindfulness so that we're able to do that. We can have compassion for the other person who is having a hard time, also we can have compassion for ourselves. And it's so easy for us, oh man, this is a whole different workshop. It's so easy for us to want to like get our pain out of our system as quickly as possible. Superhuman of us, okay? Another strategy that we can try though is being with our pain and letting it be our teacher, which is uncomfortable and it sucks. And I avoid it sometimes still too. I avoided it for like 6 years when I was in that relationship. And then another couple years after that when I was not in it anymore, right? So it's tempting to avoid it, but that pain can be one of our best teachers.
Kind of like if you handle a bad situation and didn't make any healthy choices, and the next day, you had more of a clear mind, you're like, God, why did I do? I don't want to feel this way. I don't like how, it didn't help anything, and now today I feel crappy. Is that kind of what you mean?
By which part? I'm not following, I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Got it. Yes, totally. That is a good example of a situation where that would be helpful. Absolutely. If we realize we've done something that isn't in line with our values, or now we're living in the negative consequences of it, and it's so easy for us to want to take the edge off of it or ignore it or whatever, or push it down in some way. And if we can instead hang out with mindfulness, be with it, instead of try to change it or strive for something different, like hanging out with it. And I can't tell you exactly what you're going to get out of it, but I can tell you that that has been one of the most powerful practices of my life, is learning to be with my pain and have compassion for myself in the process, which is hard too. Instead of push it away, take on another responsibility so I don't have time to think or feel whatever, right? Yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's an excellent example. What was that?
I've experienced quite a bit of that lately in the last month, just becoming more aware, and it still feels crappy. When you do actually go through it, it's like,
yes. Yep. Yeah, it does feel crappy. It feels crappy, right? Acceptance. This feels crappy. Yeah. Okay. And then when we hang out with it, when we get still with it, things come up, that our wisdom comes up, right? And we get the chance to listen to our wisdom instead of react. So we can make our next best choice. Okay. Related to this, but slightly different. This idea of like using stress, whether it's ongoing stress or something that's situational, or a mindset, whatever kind of stress it is, using it as an opportunity to practice mindfulness. Whoop, that's not the right page. Similar but different. And if take this or leave this, but we could also think about it as like an assignment, right? The stress that comes into our life is like, life giving us assignments. And if the goal of the course of our life is to become our best person or our most evolved person or our highest self, whatever works for you. Maybe it's religious, maybe it's not, maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's just wanting to feel good. But if whatever the end result of what your course is, it's an assignment. Right? So thinking about it in that way, how could I use this as an assignment to get better or get closer to that goal? Right? So that's, what I was just talking about before, an example that you gave is like sitting with the pain. That is one way that we can be with the assignment and let it teach us. Right? Or developing more patience or being more compassionate to ourselves. That might be one of the assignments that we're learning over and over and over and over again throughout the course of our life, to be our highest self, our most evolved self, whatever it is. Okay, so similar but slightly different mind if that works for you. Okay, so time keeps moving, doesn't it? Okay, so a few things that I haven't already mentioned. So, well, I just want to reiterate that like the practicing of mindfulness is really important, right? So instead of waiting for something to get stressful, build your resilience, right? So I like to use this metaphor of like having a bucket, right? And there are holes at the bottom of the bucket, but the holes can change. There can be more holes, less holes, bigger holes, smaller. The holes can be bigger or smaller. And so the holes are going to be there. So we have to keep refilling the bucket, right? Keep refilling the bucket. And if we keep refilling the bucket, if another hole shows up, that's okay, because we've got stuff in the bucket and we're continuing to refill it. And eventually that hole might get smaller again, and that's great, right? But we're always going to get new holes, and the holes are going to change. So we have to keep refilling the bucket continuously. So don't wait till you have holes in your bucket to do things. Like, take care of yourself. So that, yeah.
So kind of like what you just said, but not quite. What would you say to like one of the habits I have? You get a form. You have to complete it. You get multiple forms. You have to complete all of them by the 27th. I literally will let everything pile up and get everything done in one day. It's like it's like creating an office at my house for one day and doing nothing but everything and getting everything done in one day when I could have gotten it done in all the week. Like I subconsciously create the most stressful day.
Yeah.
But almost because it's comforting.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to hesitate to answer that, because I feel like I can't tell you what that reason is, like why that's happening, and what that subconscious thing is that's going on under the surface. But when we're talking about like awareness that that's stressful, we can maybe keep in mind like what's the first arrow, what are the second arrows, and we are in charge of those second arrows. So noticing what are your thoughts that are going on. And when we are able to get still and notice those thoughts, we have choice. So we can start making choices that are in line with what's best for us instead of reacting. And part of our reacting, our normal human reacting, is avoiding pain, avoiding things that we tell ourselves are going to be painful, right? So I will offer that for now. Okay. Okay, because I can't tell you what need that is meeting for you. Therapist would be helpful. Yep. So so thinking about like, I mean, we were talking about before, like what can you do to manage those ongoing stresses? Make choices to manage your ongoing stresses or reduce them. You have a choice to do that. But you make a good point. Sometimes we know what's best for us and we do something that's opposite of that. And that's when I would say get some support, whether that's a therapist or a life coach or a group, like whatever, a support system around you to help work through those things and look at like what is going on in my mind. But mindfulness is going to help you get more clear about like what is going on in my brain, right? Like what are the beliefs that I have? What are the thoughts that I'm having that's contributing to my reality, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But you bring up a good point that our, like I was saying, like our mindsets can be some of those holes, right? Our mindsets can be holes in our bucket. Okay. So we don't need to wait though until we are depleted to fill our bucket. So the more we're filling our bucket with mindfulness practices, because they make our brain more resilient, makes our body more resilient. So mindfulness practices and practicing on being is also going to help us so that when there is a stressful situation, we actually respond in a more calm, value-driven way. Over time, we find ourselves responding mindfully and in a value-driven way instead of just reacting and then dealing with the consequences later, for better or for worse, right? So doing what we need to do, ongoing. So we talked about self-care, and I actually love to reframe selfish. Selfish, we could also think of as having an interest in myself, right? Having an interest in my own well-being, that is selfish. And we should be selfish. We should be selfish, right? So finding ways to be selfish. So one thing that I do that I make time for on a regular basis is I do a lot of cycling. And I get really busy. But so one way that I found to like kind of even eliminate, I'm not a fan of traffic, right? Like it's one of my assignments, right? So traffic is difficult for me, being stuck in traffic. In my mind, like my mindset, this is just an example, the story I tell myself is this is a waste of time and I could be doing other things, as if there are other things that I should be doing anyway, right? Like, but anyway, so traffic is stressful for me. My mindset about traffic, to be more clear, my mindset about traffic is stressful for me. Anyway, I ride my bike to work as often as I can. I love riding my bike. I love riding my bike, and I don't have to sit in traffic. It's wonderful, right? So finding ways that you can reduce some of those stressors, but also do things regularly that fill the bucket. I also love being in nature. I love it. So now every year, starting this year, we did it in June, one of my self-renewal weekends is camping and canoeing on the St. Croix. So we partner with Wilderness Inquiry, and so we do mindfulness and self-renewal practices in nature, right? And it's awesome. So things like that, like making time for it. Don't wait till you're depleted, right? So if we're talking about managing stress, we also have to manage taking care of ourselves. So what this also comes to is the topic of your life balance. This is your choice. A lot of us have pretty concrete, rigid beliefs that it's not our choice, that we have to be working a full-time job and we have to be paying rent or we have to pay our mortgage. And sometimes we're in those situations where like, yes, I've chosen that and that is my reality right now. But your life balance is up to you. It's up to you. Attitudes that you bring to work, that is up to you. So finding balance. And if there are things that bring you joy and enthusiasm or peace and calm, put those into your daily life. Don't do it once a year when you finally go on that vacation and you come back more stressed out than you were to begin with, right? Regularly, daily, weekly, get those into your schedule. Have actual balance so that you can feel balanced. Because when we feel balanced, we are more likely to respond out of our wise self instead of react out of our, human defensive self. Does that make sense? Okay. So some of this is kind of like, yeah, we already know this. We've been preached at it before. But how many, we know better, but how many of us are actually doing that? Like I still have my times of being like, oh my gosh, I did it again. I took on everything. And now I'm stressed out and I'm irritable and I'm knocking things out off the counter as I walk out the door. When I get clumsy, that's my sign, by the way. That's one of my signs that I've like gone over the line of balance. So it's a continuous practice. We don't figure it out once and then we're set to go for the rest of our life. We have to reevaluate and come back to it over and over again. But yeah, we know better, but that doesn't mean that we do better, right? At least for me. I'll say that for me. Okay. So I don't have time to go through this with you. I wanted to end on this meditation that's based in equanimity. But you can find, oh jeebers, I think there's one on the YouTube channel, and I think there might be one also in the One Moment Center Facebook page. There's a video and an audio for a meditation on equanimity. Equanimity, so EQUA. NAMITY. So equanimity is this idea that we can find peace and calm within us no matter what's going on outside of us. Right? So everything that we talked about today is essentially the goal is finding equanimity. Stress is going to happen. Things are going to happen that we don't like. We're going to have thoughts and mindsets that we, are second arrows and reactions about those things that, the first arrows, the stresses that weren't in our control. So equanimity is this idea, like I said, of finding calm and peace within us, no matter what's going on outside of us. So I love this metaphor of imagining that you're out on the ocean and there's this giant crashing storm going on, right? So there's lightning and thunder and the wind and the waves and the rain that's coming down. So like it's just chaotic out there. But does anybody here scuba dive? No? Okay, only one. So when we drop below the surface, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet, it's totally calm, right? So up on the surface, it's crashing, it's chaotic, but you drop 50 feet down, it's undisturbed. So that's what we want to find within ourselves, is that place within us that we can anchor into that is calm, it is undisturbed. And being able to find that and come back to that over and over and over again, whether it's somebody sending us chat messages at work that we're really annoyed with and we want to stop, or our finances aren't working out for us the way we, or our car broke down on our way to an appointment that we set up, a month ago, whatever it is, we have chronic pain, whatever it is, being able to find that place within you that is calm and undisturbed. And you guys, it is already there. You don't have to create it. It is there. It is already there. So I wanted to walk you through that meditation, but unfortunately, I just have to put you on a cliffhanger and say, find it for yourself. Or actually, I can do this too. And I'm not trying to coerce you into signing up on the email list. But if you do sign up, I can send that to you. So you don't even have to go searching for it. I can just send it to you. If you want to put your name down because you want me to just send that to your email, but you don't want to be on the ongoing email list, just put a star next to it, or put a star if you don't want to be on the email list, but you do want the meditation. If I just see your name and email address, you're going on the email list. That make sense? Okay. So I will send that to you if you want it, but it's a really powerful meditation, right? Because you guys, we have that power to be able to drop into that calm place no matter what's going on outside of us. And then when we're in that place, we can respond wisely. And it changes our life when we're not reacting from moment to moment to moment to moment. Okay, so I will end with that. There's so many more things I could say or add, but in an hour and a half, I can't do all the things. I can't go into detail about all the things. So if this is piquing your interest about anything, feel free to email me too if you want, and look into the other things that are available out there, whether I do it or somebody else does it. So you guys probably all came through Meetup, is that right? Okay, so on Meetup, I only put things that are live, but I actually do some online courses. So I'm actually in the middle of one befriending our body, right? So a lot of us have body shame and we've internalized these messages, and that's stressful. And so we're working on clearing all that out so that we can be at peace with our body and use our body for purpose instead of hitting on ourselves all the time. But that's just an example. So, and then there's live things like the weekends, and I brought a flyer for a shop that I'm doing end of August, beginning of September, for actually taking the stuff that we're learning today, and we go a lot more in depth. And there's practices that you get to do throughout the weeks. And we're using mindfulness to actually kind of start to awaken to that wisdom that I about. So there are things out there. If this is feeling like something is pulling you and calling your name, I just hope that you listen to that and that you follow that call. And it doesn't have to be with me. If it's with me, awesome. I love you guys. I'd love to hang out with you more. But I just hope that you find what is right for you. And there are so many teachers out there, whether it's situations or books or podcasts or live events, whatever. I just hope that you find what you need. And I'm happy to help you find that if something is I don't know where to go with this. Okay, so please just let me know. Okay, well, I'm gonna shut this off, and then if you guys have any questions as we clean up and or as I clean up and you guys pack up your own belongings, feel free. Like, it doesn't bother me to like answer questions as we're all just like kind of mingling, okay? Okay. All right. Excellent. Absolutely.
Nice to meet you all.